Welcome to the side event of the African Community Resource Rights Alliance. My name is Helena Steenkamp. I am from the Komani San community in South Africa, also known as the Southern Kalahari Bushmen. And I am also the co-chair of the African Community Resource Rights Alliance. And before we go further, the two ladies will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good day, everybody, and thank you, our moderator, Ms. Elena. I'm Leslie Jansen, and I'm from Cape Town, born and bred in South Africa. I'm from the Khoikhoi community, and I am the managing director at Accra, and I'm very happy to be part of today's discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Talitha Wayne. I am working as a program officer at Accra with Leslie and Helena, and I'm also an attorney in training. I'm based in the Cape Town offices. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, we just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity and for allowing us to use the space. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion because I think it occupies a very special position in the current global discourse regarding the issues of Indigenous people. And what is really important about this discussion today is that it combines two perspectives, like the rights of Indigenous people, but also the connection between Indigenous people's rights and conservation. As we have seen globally of late, is that there's a lot of issues around Indigenous peoples, and that all those issues are very connected to our land, our Indigenous knowledges, and conservation, because although a little of us as Indigenous peoples lives on our land, that is our living heritage, through plants and also our special knowledge and our connections to fauna and flora. But there's also a lot, most of our Indigenous peoples are not on their land, so they are, due to all these issues globally, displaced from their lands, and all of this is like what really make this discussion of today very important, because there's a lot is happening, and there's a lot of issues regarding we as Indigenous peoples in conservation. So for me, today is really a privilege to be part of the discussion, and in the session, we really want to get a brief knowledge of the work of Accra, what they do, what their vision is, and what they do to closing this gap. And my first question I'm gonna pose to Talita, and that is like, Talita, why does Accra exist? Why do you want to see change? And also, what is your theory of change as an organization? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Helena. So Accra exists as an NPO that's Indigenous-led, as we've mentioned, based in South Africa, based in Cape Town, but working with Indigenous communities across the sub-region of Southern Africa. Right now we are working with communities in Botswana, Namibia, and then obviously South Africa as well. And the essence of our work is really about providing legal and technical support to Indigenous communities, specifically around their biocultural rights, and their ability to access, use, and benefit from, and conserve from their natural resources and their lands. I think when it comes to the question of the theory of change, Accra is obviously cognizant of the reality that the whole globe is facing in terms of the convergence of these different crises, and at the forefront of that being the climate change crisis. And we're cognizant of the fact that Indigenous peoples, while being the least to contribute to the human-induced impacts of climate change, are at the forefront of experiencing the detrimental consequences within their communities. And so we want to assert or advocate for an Indigenous-led approach to providing solutions within this context, where we're restoring or supporting the communities in their advocacy efforts to restore their relationship with their lands and territories, recognizing that Indigenous peoples are best positioned to provide the solutions that are facing the world. And so that's part of our approach. And I think part of the way that we do that is through the legal support. We are made up primarily of lawyers. Leslie is an attorney. I'm an attorney in training. And we also have a strategic partnership with a clinic that's based in Cape Town as well, called the Peace Center. And we concluded that partnership recently. And through the Peace Center, we can provide the strategic litigation support to the Indigenous communities in terms of the areas where they've identified their priorities. Alongside that, we use different approaches as well, like policy advocacy, which brings us into a space like the UN Permanent Forum, where we're also supporting other Indigenous communities from the sub-region to be able to attend, so that we have a sustained presence within these policy forums, where decisions are being made that impact their daily lives and realities on the ground. So I think at a high level, that's why ACRA exists, and that's sort of the vision that we have in terms of our sub-region in Southern Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Talita. And now I'm going straight to Leslie. Leslie, what is the approach of ACRA in terms of right-based conservation? Because there's a lot of that's been said about conservation and that it's separate from the rights of human beings, especially large organizations or tourism industries coming and displacing us as Indigenous peoples, and rather put profits ahead of us as human beings. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, moderator, and also Talita, for framing ACRA's theory of change. I think I'm going to in the first place, look at that question from Southern Africa. Southern Africa continues to face the situation where its Indigenous peoples, as characterized by the African Commission and as characterized by the UN, are still not recognized. So as a peoples, we unfortunately constitutionally are not formalized within our state. Yes, we are there as individuals, but in all of the markers that makes us a peoples, and in terms of the minimum that we need to survive, as characterized by the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, being our land, recognition of our culture, recognition of our languages, access to what is important for our health, what is important for us to thrive, those things are not in place. We are either regarded to be recognized under other cultural communities, or we are under a forced identity. In South Africa, we are forcibly labeled colored, and that unfortunately is still with us. And that situation is really not a pie in the sky. It's taken up in at least 3 UN mission reports taken up by the special rapporteurs. And so there's these bodies of recommendations. I think it's something like 46 recommendations per report, which speaks to what is required of our states to ensure as a minimum, as a peoples, for us to survive and thrive, what needs to happen. And why that is important, as Talita has so beautifully outlined, is that our communities hold deep knowledges to understanding the environment, to understanding what it is for health, understanding what it is to mitigate challenges, be it the environment, be it climatic. Our people have a deep history, and that knowledge is still there. And there are communities that are really what we would say the frontliners in defending our environment. So it's an important service they are actually delivering to our natural environment, and especially the moment we find ourselves in, we cannot afford to stand in solidarity with Indigenous people to ensure that their rights are protected. And why we as lawyers are organizing ourselves in this way, because this moment in time particularly needs to articulate the complexities our people are trying to eke out an existence, do what comes naturally to them, namely stewarding our plants, stewarding our animal wildlife, stewarding our fisheries resources. These are communities that are facing serious challenges such as criminalization, for wanting to go fish, for wanting to get access to their plants, and so there are problems. And conservation, Ms. Moderator, is one of the key barriers to prevent our people to thrive as a people. And so, given the climatic challenges of climate change, the moment we find ourselves in, Accra feels that we want to really dedicate our time and our effort to help in ensuring that fortress conservation, we also, in a way, recovering from that, and we're trying to move to a people-centered, indigenous-led way of living and being. So Accra feels with our approach, it can give an important contribution to the ways of life of these communities and the moment in time that it needs. So in terms of South Africa, conservation is still a complex conversation. Indigenous people, as you said earlier, it's few communities that are on the land. We are for the most not on the land. We are for the most, a lot of our land are classified as conservation areas, protected areas, state land. And so these are spaces we need to find how within the rule of law, with due recognition of Indigenous people's rights, how do we also thrive? How do we conserve biodiversity, steward our natural resources in a way that we can thrive, that it's sustainable, and that our biodiversity can be conserved. And in that sense, Accra, those are the cases that Accra is grappling with to ensure that our people can thrive. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. My next question I'll pose to Dalita again to tell us what is biocultural community protocols and why are they important for us as Indigenous peoples?
Yes, thank you, Helena. Maybe as a point of departure, we can explore the idea of biocultural rights, which inform the biocultural community protocols. And I think biocultural rights really is about articulating something that Indigenous peoples and Indigenous communities have held and known long before I guess there would have even been a term for it, which is that there is an inseparability between peoples, culture, land, and resources. And so what the biocultural rights approach looks at, which I think I alluded to earlier about managing, using, benefiting from, conserving natural resources and lands, is about recognizing that if we remove peoples from their lands, as both Helena and Leslie have alluded to the fact that in the Southern African context, Indigenous peoples have been removed from their lands. They've been disconnected from their ancestral territories and the natural resources found within that space. That has a detrimental impact on the peoples themselves, whether that's through culture, through identity, spiritual loss. But the converse is also true in the sense that removing Indigenous peoples from their lands has a detrimental impact on the lands as well and biodiversity. And so biocultural rights is really about, again, trying to restore that connection, and advocating for that within Southern Africa is particularly important because of the reasons that Leslie and Helena have alluded to and set out. And so I forgot to mention at the beginning that Accra, when we're supporting our communities in the biocultural rights approach, we do focus on key resource species. So that's plants, animals, fisheries, forestries, critical minerals. And so part of the BCP approach, the biocultural community protocols, is about having community-led, community-initiated tools that articulate the identity of Indigenous peoples, which is incredibly important within the context of Southern Africa, where we have the struggle of non-recognition on the part of states. So the tool then comes into the place where the communities themselves are able to articulate their identity as Indigenous peoples, articulate what their connection is to their lands, specifically ancestral lands, even when they've been disconnected from it, and the natural resources as well. And to use these this tool, the BCP, as a document that they can use to engage external actors who'd want to come into their space. This kind of defines, this is our Indigenous law, this is our approach. If you want to engage us, engage our lands, engage our natural resources, you have to comply with our way of doing things, which is really important because Leslie and I were discussing yesterday that Accra's advisor, Jennifer Tauli Corpuz, she made a really profound statement in the session yesterday where she mentioned that Indigenous peoples predate the existence of modern states. And so their rights, their identity, it's not contingent on the recognition of states today. And so I think BCPs take that and they put it into practice so that communities again have a tool that they can uphold and say, this is who we are, whether you recognize us or not, and this is what we want you to engage us as. And I think maybe just to close off, from Accra's perspective, we have been seeing that BCPs do work. We've been supporting some communities, whether it's about facing evictions and returning to ancestral land, or the Richtersveld Nama community also developed a BCP with Accra support where they could articulate again, in light of their constitutional court victory, their rights to their lands and the minerals that they owned ancestrally and today. And we've seen that works in terms of engaging with states. It's had some levels of success, and so that's part of our approach that we definitely want to use more and more as Indigenous lawmaking in a form. So I think that's why BCPs matter.
Thank you, Talita, on that. I just want to say that this protocols is really important for our communities. And myself, coming from a community who do live on our land, but we are not part of the land where we have heritage and cultural rights. So currently there is state policies that want us to use permits to go into our conservational area and our protected areas. That makes that most of our community are not being able to go there and practice their rights as a community. So I think the work that Accra is doing well, and I know that we will also go to communities like mine and ensure that we also have those protocols and policies to allow us to access our resources. So thank you. Any final remarks before we close or open for questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Moderator. I think just to building on what Talita set out is just this issue of biocultural community protocols underlies for us a shift in power and equalizing power relations where communities are not just subject to formal laws, but their ways of life is also legal. It also has power. And that has not often been given its due recognition. And so we have our Constitutional Court in South Africa has laid groundbreaking case law to help us post-apartheid reinterpret the issue of customary law to what we term living customary law. And it is about affirming communities that just because there are gaps in laws, gaps in implementation, does not undergird or take away your own rights, your own knowledges, your own ways of life. And we've got a Constitutional Court decision in Richtersveld of the Nama people where they walked for over a decade for this victory, and the Constitutional Court said very importantly that Indigenous law should have equal standing as formal laws. And so what we're doing is not outside of the sphere of rule of law. It's very much within the constitutional dispensation of Southern Africa, of the African Charter, and South Africa's constitution. And so it is just reminding communities that they have the power in their hands to self-determine their own destinies. Thank you so much.
No, I don't want to add to that, Leslie. I think that maybe is the point that we should leave on. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and listening to Accra is the work they are doing and regarding our connections between the respect for our rights as Indigenous peoples and conservation and the combination of these two. I think it was important that we have this discussion today, and I'm really looking forward to such discussions and seeing that there's a need for this for us to align with policies to being able to access our rights to our lands. So I want to thank everyone for coming today and those who listen in. Thank you very much.